Very warm welcome to BBC News, broadcasting to our viewers in America and around the globe. My name's Mike Embley. Our top stories. Donald Trump lashes out at his own party after the Republicans' shock defeat in Alabama.
A lot of Republicans feel differently. They're very happy with the way it turned out. But I would have, as the leader of the party, I would have liked to have had the seat.
The British government loses a key vote in Parliament on Brexit just before a crucial European Union summit. Special report from the Democratic Congo, where violence could be pushing the country into famine. And up and away, how prisoners in the UK used remote-controlled drones to smuggle drugs inside. Hello, the Democrat Doug Jones has spoken of a new momentum in American politics. His surprise win in the Alabama special election is the first time a Democrat to the Senate in 25 years. Mr. Trump has been distancing himself from the defeated Republican candidate who endorsed during the campaign, but the loss complicates the president's chances of passing major legislation. Alabama's new senator-elect has said he wants to work with politicians from both parties.
I want to sit down with folks on both sides of the aisle, both sides of an issue. I think that's what's missing here, is that I want to talk to people on both sides of an issue, not just political parties, to try to learn what I can and make some decisions based on the people of Alabama.
Doug Jones there. Well, the result hasn't just shifted the political landscape in Alabama. It might have impact across the country, as the BBC's Nick Bryant reports.
Amidst all the noise and rage of American politics, it's worth remembering elections are often decided in quiet suburbs. That was true in Alabama, where moderate Republicans didn't turn out for their party's radical scandal-hit candidate, and where many don't much like Donald Trump either.
It's a rejection of Donald Trump.
Tracy James is a lifelong Republican who yesterday went Democrat. It was also a protest vote against...
I do think Donald Trump has a problem. Republican suburbs. You don't know what's going to come out of his mouth next. You don't know whether we're going to go to war with North Korea. You don't know if he's going to insult a woman in Congress. I think they're very uncomfortable with that.
Modern-day Democrats aren't supposed to win in staunchly conservative states like Alabama. It hasn't happened here for 25 years. No wonder the blizzard of confetti.
Alabama has been at a crossroads. We have been at crossroads in the past, and unfortunately we have usually taken the wrong fork. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, you took the right road.
The losing Republican candidate Roy Moore thought he was on his way to Washington, but he was hit by allegations which he denies of sexual misconduct against teenage girls and shunned by senior figures in the Republican establishment. That's where the anger of his dejected supporters was directed.
It's really sad for the people of Alabama what took place in this state tonight.
You think you've been betrayed by the Republican establishment?
Absolutely. No doubt about that.
It's true, you can't always get what you want. A lesson for Donald Trump, who has strongly backed Roy Moore.
So get out.
Deny accusations of wrongdoing as fake news and to attack accusers. With the Republican majority in the Senate reduced to a single seat, it will be even harder for the president to enact his stalled legislative agenda. The Democrats hope this result is indicative of an anti-Trump wave which will help win them back Capitol Hill in next year's congressional elections. This Senate race doubled as a battle for the soul of the Republican movement and thus marked a defeat for conservative insurgents against the party establishment. That too is a setback for Donald Trump and his unorthodox brand of politics. Nick Bryant, BBC News, Alabama.
Britain's Prime Minister has suffered a significant defeat in Parliament over her Brexit plans. Rebel members of Parliament from Theresa May's own Conservative Party put forward an amendment, and it means the government will have to put the final Brexit deal through full parliamentary scrutiny. This is how the result was announced, and it was close.
The ayes to the right, 309. The noes to the left, 305.
Our political correspondent Alex Forsyth told us the result of that vote is a blow to the Prime Minister's authority.
It shows that she can't get everything she wants to through the Houses of Parliament without being challenged, and sometimes by MPs on her own side. And this happens just before she's going off to Brussels tomorrow to meet the other EU leaders. So it's unwelcome timing. The government did all it could today to try to stop this happening. But it is worth saying that this was a very narrow vote. There were just 4 votes in it. And there were 11 Conservatives that voted against the government. So the numbers aren't huge. But what it really highlights is that because when there was a general election in the UK back in June, Theresa May lost her majority in Parliament, and that means that she has to rely on every vote, which shows just how tough the parliamentary maths is, how she's beholden to MPs on her own side and from other parties, which of course makes her position in these negotiations with Brussels very difficult. And tonight we've seen it play out, the impact that that can have.
Alex Forsyth for us there. Hundreds of thousands of people, most of them children, face starvation in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The crisis is centred on the central Kasai region, where fighting erupted last year after the killing of a traditional leader in clashes with security forces. Since then, anti-government factions have been locked in a spiral of violence, with government troops and other forces backed by Kinshasa. The BBC's Africa editor, Fergal Keane, gained rare access to this unfolding trend. Some parts of his report you may find interesting.
In a place so green, a land so fertile, a man-made hunger has enveloped Kasai. Nearly 500,000 children are at risk from severe malnutrition.
We walked for 3 months to get here. When I saw my daughter sick, my heart was full of sadness.
Children, majority of the nearly 1.5 million people displaced here. It began in June last year after a local chief, Kamina Nsapu, rebelled against a corrupt and brutal government. He was killed. In the terror that followed, both sides committed atrocities.
We were sleeping when they entered our place and asked, "Who are all these people sleeping here? We can kill all the men who are..." And after killing them, we will tell our chiefs and show off about so many people we have killed in this village.
A nurse points to the swelling caused by malnutrition. By pressing the skin, Crispin Mputu can assess the severity of the condition. Imagine walking on these legs. With the worst fighting over, people are returning to their villages. But they find homes burned, property looted.
We were starving, for we had no food. We headed to the main road to look for food, but there was only dead bodies.
Then a young woman, weakened by disease. She is being taken home to die. At this food distribution, only half rations were being given out. The World Food Programme is running out of money to feed the hungry and is warning many will die without international. Money that might have helped provide nutrition and healthcare has been stolen by a corrupt, aided by foreign corporations.
This is the heart of the matter, as I put it to the governor of Kasai. As a government official, do you feel any sense of shame about the looting, the corruption that has helped to bring your people to this misery?
You know, this concept of corruption cannot be challenged, but it should not be tied too much to Congo or Africa and used to justify the absence of action. The most important thing is that when you give money, you get some guarantee that this money is well used.
This is the government-run hospital in Chikapa, the second city of the province. 3-year-old Ishutsi Mbombo has just died. A distraught mother waits for news of her sick child. And a lullaby, as tiny lungs fight to survive. Just some lives out of so many here, hanging in the balance. Fergal Keane, BBC News, Kasai.
Much more to come for you on BBC News, including this, a whole new ball game, how rugby is making inroads in a country that is devoted to football. Very good to have you with us. One main headline for you this hour. President Trump himself from the controversial Republican candidate Roy Moore after his loss in the Alabama special election to the Senate. More now on the fallout from the Alabama special election and the surprise victory of the Democratic Party candidate over Roy Moore. Doug Jones, of course, the new senator-elect. We can speak now to Whit Ayres, Republican pollster. He's in Arlington in the state of Virginia. Thanks very much for your time. I guess there must be some relief. Surely Moore would have faced ethics hearings, possibly moves to bar him from the Senate, or pretty embarrassing with the midterms coming up next year.
Well, there was no real good outcome for Republicans in this, but we had the least bad outcome. Certainly all of those situations that you have outlined would have occurred had Roy Moore won this race.
You will have heard quite a few Republicans wondering if both houses of Congress are now up for grabs next year. Yet surely it's quite hard to draw lessons from Alabama, isn't it? Roy Moore was a uniquely polarizing candidate. One of your colleagues I see saying today, we managed to put up the only guy in Alabama who could lose to a Democrat.
I think that's true. Roy Moore was a particularly toxic candidate, but there's still patterns that are disturbing for Republicans. The kinds of people who voted for Roy Moore in Alabama were the same kinds of people who voted for the Democratic candidate for governor in Virginia. That's especially true of college-educated suburban women. So the pattern is disturbing. That doesn't mean Republicans are going to lose the House or the Senate next year. But midterm elections in America are always difficult for the party in power. And next year looks to be very challenging for Republicans.
Yes, there are worries there, aren't there? Because whatever Mr. Trump says now, whatever he said before the campaign really got going, he backed Roy Moore very publicly. So did Steve Bannon. So did the Republican National Committee. Is it possible that we are reaching the limits of the Trump approach, how effective it can be?
Well, both Roy Moore and Donald Trump, as well as Steve Bannon, his chief strategist, have followed a strategy of appealing to a very narrow slice of the electorate. And I think we saw with Roy Moore's loss yesterday the limits of that strategy.
Right, we shall see soon enough, won't we? Thank you very much indeed for your insights.
Happy to be with you.
Now, European leaders are to meet in Brussels on Thursday to discuss the issue of migration. The talks are expected to focus on extra funding to try to stem the flow of people from sub-Saharan Africa. More than 100 men and women were rescued from a sinking boat off the coast of Libya as they attempted to cross to Italy. The number of migrants in the Mediterranean has passed 3,000 for the fourth year in a row. Andrew Plant reports.
Soaked through, shoeless and limping along, 114 migrants, all from sub-Saharan Africa, rescued off the Libyan coast as their boat began to sink beneath the water.
Almost died, thanks to the Libyan navies, they help us at the sea. Our boat almost capsized, because we lost everything. It broke middle, almost.
Almost 1,000 migrants arrived in Italy over the past few days, successfully crossing the Mediterranean. It's estimated around 3,000 have died on the same journey. Those that succeed often complain of mistreatment at the hands of Libyan guards. Meanwhile, this detention centre in Benghazi, Libya's second largest city, is restocking for the winter with blankets and mattresses in preparation for more arrivals. The policy here is to repatriate the men, women and children who arrive, more than 4,000 sent back to their home countries this year.
There are still some nationalities that are difficult to deport, such as Somalians, Ethiopians and Eritreans, because of the problems in their countries. But other nationalities are deported every once in a while.
Around 164,000 migrants have arrived in Europe in 2017. That's less than half the number last year. At its height in 2015, the number was more than 1 million. But with southern European countries still bearing the brunt, all 28 EU leaders are due to discuss the issue at talks in Brussels on Thursday. Andrew Plant, BBC News.
Here in the UK, 8 people have been sentenced for smuggling drugs into prisons using drones. Police have identified at least 49 drone flights carrying contraband, thought to have been worth as much as $1.6 million. Daniel Sanford has the story.
Cameras originally set to take pictures of wildlife, catching instead Britain's most prolific drone smuggling gang. Recorded pilot Mervyn Foster time and again flying the drone from a field outside Hewell Prison in Worcestershire, its illegal cargo hanging underneath on fishing line. From the field, the smugglers had a view directly into the jail and the prison block where the drone's cargo was pulled in through the windows. Over the months, the gang grew in confidence and sophistication. They'd started by simply throwing the drugs over the prison wall, but then they started using drones and they added to the contraband mobile phones, weapons, screwdrivers, and even a Freeview box with a remote control. Cameras inside Hewell Prison caught over £1 million worth of drugs and phones, continuing even after they'd been arrested and charged. The contents of the loads on at least 49 flights were specifically ordered by individual inmates from the Midlands to Scotland. The recent epidemic of drones being used to airlift contraband into prison grew from nothing in just 4 years.
We didn't see this one coming, so the drones literally came from nowhere. They were flown in and it actually just was a game changer for us. So we had to re-look at our systems, our procedures and our methods of gathering intelligence. And it gave the gangs an opportunity to actually breach the secure perimeters almost effortlessly.
To crack this case, officers downloaded the memories of the drones they seized and linked that to phone calls the smugglers were making. The prison's ministers had to invest millions of pounds in a new national network of police and prison officers working together, which helped catch this gang.
What we've shown here is that this is the most prolific gang we've come across, and we've been able to deal with them. They are going to be serving jail time. I think that is a huge success.
But with huge profits being made by the smuggling gangs, keeping drones away from prisons is going to be a lengthy battle. Daniel Sanford, BBC News at HMP Hewell in Worcestershire.
Here in London, members of the royal family will attend St Paul's Cathedral, with many of those affected by the fire at Grenfell Tower, West London, in June this year. Exactly 6 months ago now, and it claimed the lives of 71 victims and made hundreds homeless. Our special correspondent, Alan Little, has been back to the area where the disaster happened.
It is the abiding image of 2017. It scars the West London cityscape and, perhaps, the conscience of the country. That it happened in one of the richest parts of London has made it, for many, a tale of two Britons, living side by side, but separately. The Dale Youth Boxing Club used to train in Grenfell Tower. Their gym was lost to the fire. Now they use this concrete corner of a multi-storey car park.
3, 2...
The club coach is Gary McGuinness. He says years of gentrification, of regeneration projects, have made the old London working class, who used to thrive here, a diminishing presence.
Regeneration, what does the word mean, like, you know? You know, of course it has, yeah, definitely, yeah.
You should be concentrating, what do you do?
The Grenfell Tower exposed this long, steady drifting apart of rich and poor. But don't push a simple rich-poor interpretation too far here. 5 members of Mutaz Chelat's family died in the fire. For him, the problem is not that there are rich and poor, but that increasingly the poor are disregarded.
If you're going to ask where the blame is, I don't blame the rich people in Holland Park because they didn't come down here like they are. Do you know what I mean? They just happen to live where they live. It's not their fault. But if you're going to ask me who the blame is, yes, I blame the council, I blame the local authorities, I blame the government that are supposed to look after these sort of buildings. But why they're not maintaining them? That's when you could turn around and say, well, probably it's because they don't care about these sort of people, that they, you know, these so-called disadvantaged people that live in these council estates and things like that.
So-called disadvantaged, he says. For the people of Grenfell do not recognise the version of themselves that has entered the public imagination. Nina Mastro has lived on the estate for nearly 30 years.
We were portrayed as a poor, uneducated, disadvantaged people who didn't work on benefits, which is the actual opposite. A lot of people do work. There are some very highly educated people living on council estates in Grenfell Tower itself. There were architects, there were, engineers, people worked in social media, in technology, IT. So to have this kind of view simply because somebody lives on a council estate that they are not worthy or they are less than anyone else is a complete, it's a fallacy.
Did you feel insulted by it?
Deeply insulted, deeply insulted. I think also there was that sense of, oh, they're all just a bunch of foreigners. That's what makes London, I suppose that's what makes the UK. We're a multicultural society.
Its location has made Grenfell Tower a graphic symbol of inequality in Britain, an inequality that before the fire was hidden in plain sight. 71 people died in this block. It is difficult to escape the rebuke to all of us that its charred remains represent. Alan Little, BBC News in West London.
And of course, we're in that service going. In Brazil, football is like a religion, and that's putting it mildly. The entire country seemingly obsessed with to the national team. But one of the fastest growing sports in Brazil is rugby, and proponents of the oval-shaped ball are hoping the game can change lives, as Tim Orman reports.
Well, that's the question being asked at this favela in Rio de Janeiro. Boys and girls playing a different kind of ball game, something that took a little getting used to.
We arrived with 4 Oxford rugby players, and the reaction from the kids was doing here. This is quite an isolated favela, so there was the mixture of having an oval ball and having 4 massive rugby players from the UK and one from Australia coming was a bit of a shock.
The kids train twice a week, supported by volunteer coaches, but if they want to play, they have to go to school. This isn't just about sport, it's also about raising ambitions.
In Brazil, they say, for example, that because I'm black, I will never manage anything in life, that I will obviously become a builder or a drug trafficker. Being a builder is a good job, but why can't I become an architect, a doctor, or a lawyer?
I find it cool and it keeps us busy. Doing a sport we love, as well as going to school, allows us not to worry about what is going on in the favela.
The team from the favela even get the chance to play against a side from a private school. Crossing social divides, improving lives. In Brazil, they know how important sport can be. Tim Allman, BBC News.
Just to bring you up to date, in case you missed this, the US Federal Reserve has agreed to raise interest rates by 0.25 percentage points, the third rate rise this year. Policymakers believe it underscores what they call solid gains in the US economy. The Fed also boosted its economic forecast. It's projecting growth of 2.5% in GDP in 2017 and 2018. Just before we go, a baby king penguin has made its first public appearance in Singapore. It's the first of its kind to be hatched in the bird park there in nearly a decade. It's 2 months old, called Maru, which means round in Japanese. It was, in fact, the first time the adult penguin group had seen Maru. They seemed very curious about the new family member. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.